Greetings, YouTube. Today I want to talk about a hammer, a very specific hammer. This particular hammer right here. I bought this hammer at an antique store. I paid $14.40 for it. Yes, there was a sale going on, so it came out to a somewhat strange quantity. And what appeals to me this hammer? Well, it's the size and kind of a weight that I like, but it's handmade. Everything about this is a handmade hammer. It is not a purely perfect execution, but it is interesting nonetheless. Now, the first thing that intrigued me was the fact that I looked at this handle. I'm like, this is kind of interesting. And then I saw this. This is a cap. Now, when I took the cap off, I could tell just by the feel that this was steel, not aluminum. But it's stainless steel. Magnets don't really stick to it all that well. And it does have a coating on it, which is more than a little imperfect. So somebody tried to chrome it, I think, and it did not go well or didn't last well. And you can see on the cap, there's just like that did not that did not function well. The head is just made of a softer steel. I would be shocked if it would have ever been hardened, and I say this for two reasons. One, it has a peen all the way around here, like well, two-thirds of this has its edge slightly rolled. When they made this, the person made it out of a piece of solid bar stock. They made it look good. They put a nice peen shape here. However, they didn't put the classic hammer chamfer on the edge. There's a reason hammers have a little chamfer on the edge, and that's to reduce rolling. Um, it's also that also is aided by the fact that hammers are normally hardened, and this I can tell you is not, just because of the way it rolled. This is not a hardened hammer. Um, and they assembled these two pieces together, and they put a roll pin right here, and I could see myself right through the roll pin. And one other way you could tell this that this is handmade is that, again, it's perfectly made. Like, for example, right here, nicely done, but here it swells. Right there, it makes a transition to a different diameter. So these two here, this is pretty deep. It goes in about that far. So just below the knurling, where it starts to narrow down, that's where the cavity ends. I had no idea what they did that for. It could have purely been to lighten it. So they wanted more of the weight at the head, which I understand. You have this here, and there are noticeable tool marks on this. But then you have this transition to a straight section, and that is not perfectly done. It's actually kind of on the rough side. I think they could have cleaned that up a little bit, or I know I would have tried. Then it goes to a slightly larger diameter, which is what goes through the head. And if you look at here, this section up here is not evenly uh, polished down. There's an uneven. It's like the person did not. They were very careful. They were probably doing this after they pinned it, and they didn't want to harm this. So it was an imperfect execution on routing that over, which is fine. It doesn't bother me in the least. Now, one of the disadvantages to this type of hammer is that it has a round handle. That means that you're not going to get edge alignment. On most hammers, they're oval, um, and so that means they're much more easily to line up where you want to hit with this, which is sometimes somewhat important when you're doing a ball peen, because that entails a fair amount of delicate. You're actually having to get things through it just the way you want, so that you can peen something over into the shape that you desire. But I love me some handmade hammers. I own a couple of, actually more than a couple of those. Let's see. This is probably my favorite handmade hammer. This one right here. This is a hammer that was made strictly for doing slate work for roofing. And it is definitely something that was done by a person. This has just got marks all over it. And I think this may have been a file at one time. I'm not 100% on that. This has a chamfered edge for splitting uh, uh, slate tiles. This is obviously for hammering. And this is for doing some precise shaping of the slate by picking. And this has a disc, leather disc style hammer with a nut on the end that was then peened over. And I love this thing. I picked it up at a flea market for 15 bucks, which I thought was a bloody steal. Getting something like this, a new one, they still make these, people still do slate roofs. These are not cheap. These are not cheap tools. I know I had looked into one because I saw a picture somewhere, and I'm like, oh, that's a really cool looking hammer. I want one of those. Until I saw the price, and then I bumped into a handmade antique one, and I'm like, okay, I got to own this. So when I saw this, I pulled it out of a bucket of other hammers. It was like the antique guy, the guy at his booth was just nothing but tools. I've seen this guy's booth for many times. I've bought a number of his tools over the years, and just a bucket of them. And this one was in there, and I reached in, pulled it up, and as soon as I had my hands pulled it out, I'm like, I'm buying this hammer because it's just too damn cool. Again, I think he did this to lighten it because it has a really nice feel with the head, and I think that that feel might be uh, the balance might be off if that had been solid steel. So by lightening it, not to mention you do have a hollow handle if you want to put something in it. I don't really know what you want to put into the handle of a hammer, but you could put something in the handle of the hammer. It was very well done here. The knurling is pretty decently done. The stuff here on the cap is a little less well done, and it looks like it may have not. It looks like there may have been a skip on it because it looks like almost like a double. Couple of spots in there look like the knurling kind of ran over itself. Um, there's a big burr here that looks like it may have been something that was dropped. Dunk, and it damaged itself. But yeah, this is the kind of thing I love. Now this tool is being reviewed early in the morning because shortly uh, from now I'll be going down into my shop, and this is coming with me because this is going into my shop. This is not just a tool that I'll be thinking is cool like that one I just showed you because I don't do slate roofing. I just think they're really cool looking. But I do have a shop, and this is a hammer size that I really appreciate. So I'd like to put this in use and see how it fits into my overall workflow. If it does, if it doesn't fit in my overall workflow, it's still a beautiful piece of work. I still feel that I feel a connection to the guy that made this because I can almost guarantee you it was a guy that made this. Um, and their attention to detail, even if their execution was not perfect. And as a person that makes post-apocalyptic weapons and armor as a hobby, link down there to my DeviantArt page. Yeah, I appreciate things that aren't quite perfect, both for aesthetically and for the fact that I often do things that are not quite perfect. The design up here does not always end up the design I have in my hand at the end of a project. When it does, though, it's really nice. And I'm hoping that this design right here is exactly what this guy wanted, even if the execution wasn't perfect, because this is a tool that was used, and that makes me happy, because a tool you make that isn't used isn't really a useful tool. It's failing the definition of tool. It's maybe art, but it's not a tool. This is a tool, and I'm going to go put it in my shop, and I'm going to see how I like using it. And maybe there'll be a follow-up to this that I discover that I find it the best thing in my collection, or I find that I don't use it all that much at all, and I just think it's cool looking. We're going to find that out. All right, so this has been a handmade hammer that I picked up at an antique shop, and I think it's pretty darn cool. So tell me, do you have any handmade hammers in your collection?